climate refugee is a person who has been forced to leave their home as a result of the effects of climate change on their environment. Alternatively, there's the more politically correct term environmental migrant, defined as people who are forced to leave their home region due to sudden or long-term changes to their local or regional environment. These changes compromise their well-being or livelihood and include increased drought, desertification, sea level rise, and disruption of seasonal weather patterns. So the question arises, is this really an issue we have to worry about right now? As of 2019, there are already surprisingly high numbers of displacement, as shown by this data from the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, or iDMC for short. A lot of people in first world countries don't think that the effects of climate change are going to be a problem for them, or at least not very soon. But this isn't true. Coastal cities and towns will be some of the first to be impacted by climate change globally. Two places that I'd like to highlight that are here in my home country of the United States are Alaska and Louisiana. The Louisiana flood maps show how more and more of Louisiana is disappearing, and many parts inhabited today are expected to be underwater by 2050. And in Alaska, indigenous peoples like the Inupiat who have lived in Kivalina for generations are being forced to relocate after more than half of their land has been plunged into the water since the mid-1950s. But this, of course, doesn't only affect the highest polluting countries. Actually, the effects of climate change disproportionately affect marginalized communities in often less developed countries who have contributed the least to climate change. According to a study from the University of Leeds in England and the Danish Meteorological Institute, sea levels could rise another 6.7 inches by 2100, putting 16 million people in danger from coastal flooding. Another study shows that Asian countries are the most threatened, with 30 million people in China at risk of displacement, followed by nearly 13 million in Vietnam. Increased temperatures in certain areas of the world will also be a big contributing factor to the relocation of many. A small percentage of the world today is already in a barely livable hot zone, but that is expected to be about 20% by 2070. The big question is, where are these people going to go? Many people in South and Central America are in areas that are very likely to be intensely affected by climate change, and these people will want to migrate away from the equator to cooler areas. Worldwide, the effects of climate change could displace more than 1 billion people by 2050, according to the Institute for Economics and Peace, a global think tank based in Sydney, Australia. So with the flooding, heating, and changing weather patterns of the Earth, we will see people moving inwards away from the coast, and we will see people moving away from the equator.
We must start preparing for global migration today. It's a reality now. Our cities and our communities are not prepared. In fact, our economic system and our social systems are only prepared to make profit off of people who migrate. This will cause rounds of climate gentrification, and it will also penalize the movement of people, usually through exploited labor and usually through criminalization.
This is a powerful and emotional TED Talk by Colette, Pichon Battle. It's linked in the description along with the rest of the sources used for this video. I recommend checking them out yourself. This is a bigger issue than just people moving. Climate change and the casualties it's causing is a complex issue that is intertwined with so many different topics, which adds to the argument that we need to start preparing now. I think there are a lot of hypothetical conclusions that you can draw from the phenomena of environmental migrants. Widespread unemployment, worker exploitation, famine, increased poverty for millions, political tension, lack of access to healthcare, and worsening racial tensions. This is a really complicated issue. The legal and political protection and regulations will play a huge role in establishing rights and safeties for environmental migrants. Currently, there aren't any specific protections for people displaced by climate change-related forces. Though many are directly or indirectly forced from home and thus would qualify for access to refugee-like protections, even climate migrants who cross international borders do not have formal status under current international refugee law. Policy, regulation, and law will become some of the forefront and most important parts of figuring out how to handle the influx of migration all over the world. But I think all of that is just setting the stage for actually providing settlements for these migrants to be able to live after displacement. Unfortunately, I can't find much as to how countries are preparing for environmental migration, but I have seen much discussion, mostly from scholars and people promoting the discussion of how important this topic is. I think environmental design is the perfect type of design to take on this problem. Environmental design is often encompassed by human-centered design and an empathetic mindset, which are both going to be crucial in designing housing communities that can help climate refugees transition physically, socially, and psychologically to a new location. Architecture, city planning, and landscape architecture are useful disciplines that could be drawn upon to plan a place for climate refugees to go after displacement. I think these places need to be designed like small cities, with infrastructure ready for life in a service-based economy with an emphasis on mental health, support, and equity. These places are going to be melting pots with all different kinds of culture, so I wonder if the right type of design could turn these people's horrible situation into lively and uplifting communities. Environmental migration will be happening all over the world, with people immigrating and emigrating from many different countries. This means that addressing this issue could take many different forms, depending on each specific local situation, from portable to modular to larger or more permanent structures. But I think it's absolutely imperative to consider the locations, people, culture, ecology, and economics specific to proposed locations for housing these migrants. It would also be really interesting and fitting to approach these settlements in a sustainable way, honestly a must. There has been a focus from parts of the design world on refugee camps, with analyses to help these people have better living conditions. Wageningen University has released a set of sustainable design principles for refugee camps. Another group is looking at data-driven design and using mathematical models to try and make more efficient camps. The Journal of Humanitarian Logistics and Supply Chain Management studied camps in Kenya, Ethiopia, Greece, and Turkey, and worked to understand and identify challenges with a proposed new approach to camp design. I think taking all of this information together and synthesizing it to create living situations for these people before they are displaced is crucial for governments and societies to be able to handle the mass migration that is to come.